This is Studio 809.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I'm your host, Hiking Bob Falcone, and you can find me and everything you want to know about me, including how to check me on my social media, my columns at the newspaper, my other podcast, all that kind of stuff is at hikingbob.com. So check that out. Sign up for my newsletter, become a patron at Patreon, help me support this podcast. Again, everything you can find is at hikingbob.com. Today, we're going to have an interesting conversation on a topic that I know is, of interest to everybody who is in outdoor recreation. It is a new book that's come out called Nutrition for Outdoor Recreation from Marisa Michael. And Marisa, who is going to join us here in a second, registered dietitian, master's degree in sports nutrition, and has an International Olympic Committee's diploma in sports nutrition. Some pretty heady stuff here. Board certified specialist in sports dietetics, owns a private practice in Portland, Oregon, does workshops, freelance writing, supports and serves on the USA Climbing Medical Committee. I would have to say that this is not your typical nutrition book. This is one from somebody who actually does the stuff, walks the walk, talks the talk. Marisa, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This is exciting because you and I exchanged a couple of emails, and diet and stuff has been a big thing on my podcast. I had an issue with losing weight, even though I was very active. And I know this isn't a diet book. This is a nutrition book. But I think, obviously, these two things are obviously related. If you don't eat right before, after, during your outdoor activity, that can obviously throw off all kinds of things. Mine's thrown off by 60-some-odd years of doing it all wrong, I think. But in any case, we kind of went over your bio here. I'm going to say, tell us a little bit about who you are, but what else can you tell us about who you are and your background? And more importantly, what motivated you to write this book? Was it people like me and other people who you thought were just doing their nutrition all wrong? Or is it stuff you saw in your practice? What was it that got you to write this book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually started out with this book by writing a book called Nutrition for Climbers. And I wrote a second edition called Climbing Nutrition. And when I was in process of writing the second edition, I was looking for a new publisher. So I approached Falcon Guides and asked if they wanted to publish my climbing book. And they said, no, but do you want to write a book on general outdoor recreation? Because they thought that would be more for a better broad audience. And I didn't ever really think about writing this book, but it kind of fell in my lap. And I thought that's actually a really good idea, because the climbing book started out with me thinking climbers don't have very good information. They might need good information in order to optimize performance, optimize health, optimize recovery. So why not apply that to a broader outdoor athlete audience?
Absolutely. And I would think that the climbing community, which is very big here in Colorado, as I'm sure it is in Oregon and most of the West, is a big community, but obviously, outdoor recreation, hiking, obviously, is going to be much bigger than climbing. And cycling is going to be much bigger. Running is going to be much bigger. So I get where Falcon Books has come from. If we're going to publish a book, let's get a big, broad audience. Right. Seems to make a lot of sense. I've read the book. There's a lot of great information in here. And for the listener, if you're thinking this is going to be like encyclopedia size, it's not a very big book. It's an easy read. There's a lot of recipes, a lot of meal plans, a lot of really great stuff in here. It is geared towards different types of recreation. So when you read the book, you're going to see a section on cycling and hiking and running and all that kind of good stuff. I guess my biggest question for you, as somebody who's had to deal with trying to make sense of it, it is such a complicated thing. When you go online and you look up nutrition, everybody's got an opinion, and it's hard to figure out what's right and what's wrong out there. And it may not even be a matter of what's right and wrong. It might, what works for me may not work for the next person. Mm-hmm. So what do you think is let's start with this one. What do you think is the biggest misconception people have, outdoor recreationists, whatever they are, the biggest misconception they might have about proper nutrition for their favorite activity?
Yeah, I think a big one is not understanding how much food they actually need to eat. because that's really important to understand how much you need to eat to fuel your activity level. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. You could run into problems while you're actually doing the activity. If your blood sugar drops or you become dehydrated or something like that, where you might have an emergency. And I feel like when you're doing this outdoor kind of sporting recreation activities, it's not only a matter of health, like, oh, I'm trying to optimize my nutrition, I'm worried about health, but it's also a matter of safety. Because if you do become dehydrated or your blood sugar drops or you become confused, you're weak, your coordination is bad, your decision making becomes poor, that's a big safety issue. So I feel like a really big misconception is not understanding how much to eat or drink or what to eat or drink. And also, carbohydrates are kind of demonized in some diet cultures and diet circles, and carbohydrates are really, really important for outdoor athletes.
So a follow-up question to that before I have another one in mind. Is it how much they need to eat before, during, and after, all of the above? Or do you find that people, I mean, when I get done a good hike, I want a big steak, but that's probably not the best thing to do. So is it all of those things that people get it all wrong?
And I don't want to, I always, when I'm working with people one-on-one or during workshops or writing, I always approach it from a place of trying to optimize and trying to meet people where they're at. So I'm not the food police. I'm not judging, there's nothing there where I'm saying you guys are doing it wrong or there's finger wagging. It's more like, ooh, if you're curious about how to do it better or how to like really support your body, these are some things you could know. Yeah.
Okay. We find here in Colorado, I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm not sure how high you are in Oregon. My house here sits at more than a mile high, and everything I do is above this. So, I'm regularly exercising. I was just yesterday, the day before we recorded this, I was hiking at 8,000 feet, which is here it's nothing. It's not a big thing.
Yeah.
But in a case like that, those of us who live here, and I've lived here for more than 30 years, I'm acclimated to this environment. It's not a big deal for me. But I imagine, especially for somebody coming from a much lower level, sea level, which we get a lot of them out here, especially, drinking water. We talked about nutrition and people getting dehydrated and confused. We see a lot of that altitude sickness. I imagine if you're changing, or would it be correct to say that if you're changing your location to what you're normally used to, going from a dry climate to a more humid climate, going from a low elevation to a higher, or vice versa, does that change how you should, what you should eat, your nutrition?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's why I felt like this book would be really useful, because it's not nutrition in the sense of people thinking, what should I eat on a day-to-day basis for my healthy diet patterns to prevent chronic disease? It's more like performance nutrition in those scenarios. So if you're going from sea level to higher altitude, your body does demand more carbohydrate and also more fluid. And that's really important to know and really useful to know if you want to have a successful hike. And if you want to feel good and minimize any kind of altitude sickness. So the body is really subject to different climate conditions. So if it's hot or humid or extremely cold or windy or high altitude or any of these things, that can impact what and how you should eat and how you should drink to be able to feel better.
I split my time between here in Colorado and down in Arizona in the desert. Headed down. Probably about the time this airs, I'll be either in the desert or pretty close to heading down there. And of course, I'm going from 6,000 plus feet to about 1,000 feet. Yeah, so big difference there. Of course, it's hotter and we're pretty dry here in Colorado, but it's obviously much drier down in the desert. And I find that I see weight issues until I get acclimated to being back down there. Because when I go down there in the spring, I'm down there for a couple of months. So I'm down there for an extended period of time. And I find I have to adjust. I bring more water than I might necessarily bring here. Even though I'm at a higher altitude, I'm used to it here than I went down there. So I find that affects me quite a bit. Going back to the carbohydrate thing, you just kind of touched on that. It is demonized. And I have to tell you, my body specifically and all the dieting I've done does tend to be more sensitive to sugars and carbohydrates on a day-to-day basis, not necessarily performance-wise. But there's so many different things out there. Go keto, go vegan, go Atkins with no carbs, go all these things, and go pescatarian, go the Mediterranean diet. but you could be on one of those, but your nutrition when you want to go out and do something recreation-wise, you may not be sticking to those, or is that?
Yeah, you may want to adapt a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you are a vegan or vegetarian, you can definitely, enhance performance by just tweaking what you're eating a little bit, making sure you're eating enough calories and enough carbs on the trail or whatever activity you're doing. Most diets can be accommodated, but it would be pretty difficult if you're trying to do keto to go hiking, and then adding carbs would, of course, not be congruent with that diet. There's always outliers, and there's always people that want to go with their own intuition and their own lived experience. So if I'm working with someone that says like, I feel better on keto, I'm going to do this, I'm like, okay, let's work with that. Let's figure out how to optimize that within those constraints. And sometimes we talk about the pros and cons of maybe giving that up, and maybe just doing it for hiking and see how they feel, or something like that, to see if maybe they do add carbs and they're noticing a difference there that's an improvement.
So you could be on a low carb diet, but when you're getting ready to go for it, I remember back, showing my age, back in the decades ago when it was a big deal, you'd see these Olympic athletes, and they'd be, the night before their race, they'd be like eating pasta like in big bowls, which I'm from an Italian family. I would love to have a big bowl of pasta. I know that doesn't work for me. We're not quite at that level, but you would, if you got something coming up, you're running a marathon, you're going for hiking one of our 14ers, huge altitude, you would maybe the night before eat a little differently than you would on a day you're not doing that. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, definitely. You want to take into consideration your event. What are you actually trying to accomplish here? Is it a big 14er? Is it a trail run, a long trail run? Something like that, where usually most people's bodies would demand more carbs. So you can do a carb loading protocol, which is basically a couple days leading up to it, you're eating a tremendous amount of carbs. You could also just consider, like, I want to start out hydrated. I don't want to start out dehydrated. So I want to make sure I'm drinking prior to that, drinking enough fluids. You can also think about the bathroom situation. If you don't want to have any kind of GI distress, sometimes it's really useful to cut down on fiber a couple days before, just so you have minimal bowel movements, your stomach feels pretty calm, maybe don't eat spicy or greasy food. So it depends on what your goals are and what kind of situation you want to be experiencing during your event. But there are some different things you could tweak to just make sure that you have good success there.
Maybe skip the Metamucil for a couple of days.
Yes, exactly.
We actually have a race here. We have 2 races on a weekend. We have the Pikes Peak Marathon, and then we have the Pikes Peak, and I forget the name of the other one, but basically one is where they just run up Pikes Peak. Now, that's 14,150, and it's almost 13 miles one way on a trail.
Significant elevation gain there.
It's just on a trail, and then the marathon is where they run up and then they run back down, which is just so and these people are I mean, you have to qualify for it. They just don't let anybody come and do that. You have to qualify for that, at least for the marathon part, and you have to do that. But I look at that and it goes, it takes me all day just to hike something like that, let alone, these people are running it in a couple of hours. And I look at how they're all obviously incredibly fit. I couldn't do it that speed if you dropped me from an airplane, but it's obviously, they obviously have the nutrition thing down.
For that kind of event, you'd need to have your nutrition diet, have a fueling and a hydration plan. Usually they know how many carbs I'm eating per hour, where it's coming from, how many ounces per hour, do I need electrolytes? They have it kind of dialed in there.
But most of us aren't at that level. Obviously, I'm a day hiker. I'm not even a through hiker. I don't have the time to devote 2 months to doing the Colorado Trail or the PCT or anything like that. So I'm a day hiker, and my hikes may be anywhere from 4 miles to 10 miles. On a good day, I'll do a 10-mile one. And I don't hike every day, but I hike several times a week. Obviously, it's my job is to go out there and hike and talk about it and stuff. When you're hiking that frequently, and a lot of people here do, they hike on weekends and stuff, do you want to have something like your book here as a guide for daily use, or you still want to gear it just toward when you're going to get ready? I mean, if I hike 4 times a week, should this just be maybe my guide for my normal static day-to-day dieting kind of a thing, nutrition plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think daily use is useful if you are hiking that frequently, just to understand the principles behind fueling and hydration for a hike. So even though clearly your body is conditioned, you're really used to it, like it's kind of a thing that's just a part of your lifestyle. It would still probably make a difference if you decided to go on a 10-mile hike and you didn't bring food or water, versus if you knew, like, I know these foods that feel good in my stomach. I know that I need to eat every so often to feel energized so I don't bonk, or get dehydrated partway through the hike. So like these things are still relevant, even if you don't identify as like, I'm a hardcore hiker or I'm not a through hiker. Does this matter for me? I think it definitely matters. I do mostly just day hikes also, and I've been with people that have not eaten or drinking regularly throughout the hike on the trail, and we have to wait for them because their blood sugar dropped, and they have to sit down and eat about 30 minutes and then still try to start to feel better, and that's it. That's something that could have been prevented, or they could have felt better on the hike if they had just understood a couple principles about fueling regularly.
And I imagine things that the after effects or the side effects of not having proper nutrition is things like, besides being, just you run low on blood sugar, you just slow down, is things like cramps and GI issues and things we typically equate with altitude sickness. But I'm guessing from what you're telling me, it may not be altitude as much as it might be. I mean, it could very well be altitude. You are at a higher elevation, here, but it could also could be just be nutrition. You didn't.
Yeah.
I know what I need for a 5-mile hike. I also know what I need for a 10-mile hike, which is different.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I know the difference between a 5-mile hike around here in town where I know the trails and a 5-mile hike that may have a whole bunch of elevation gain.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So all those things, I guess, change your nutrition level and.
Yeah. In general, the longer the hike is and the more intense the hike is, the more calories and carbs and fluid you're going to need.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of a good rule of thumb. If it's an easy hike, maybe it's only 3 miles, it's pretty flat, you're used to it. You don't need to really overthink nutrition too much. But if it's 10 miles or longer, a lot of elevation gain, that's going to be longer, that's going to be more intense. So you just would need to bring more food with you. Yeah.
So how would somebody determine how much to bring with them? I know when it comes to, I talk to people a lot, especially visitors, about how much water to bring with them. Yeah. And I tell them, if you're not used to it, bring as much water as you can carry.
Yes.
Which, I don't expect anybody to carry a 5-gallon thing on their back, but and what I tell them is the best way to get rid of that weight is to drink the water. So if you want it off your back, drink it. But how would somebody, and I'm going to guess your book covers this, and we're going to make sure people pick up a copy of your book. How would you do that if you're used to 3 miles on flat land and maybe at lower elevation? Now you come to Colorado Springs and you're at 6,000, 7,000 feet, and you're going to do a 5-mile hike. And it may not even be all that, for me, it may not be all that difficult. For somebody coming from sea level, it might be. How would they know how much to bring? Do I bring like 3 ham sandwiches and a big thing of Gatorade, or what would I bring? How would they know what to bring?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it does. I do cover it in my book, but hopefully you have some frame of reference of how your body functions when you're hiking, and you're not just going from couch to a 5-mile in Colorado. So
we do see that though.
You probably do. Yeah, you might already know. These are the snacks I like to bring, or these are the things that settle well in my stomach, or you kind of have an understanding of that. But there are some general guidelines. So you're going for around 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. So that's about the size of like a normal bagel. Or you could do a couple pouches of a fruit snack, or you could do a couple Rice Krispie treats. If it's lower intensity, so I just listed off a bunch of simple carbohydrates. You want to have those carbohydrates there that are easy to digest. But if it's lower intensity and you're not really worried about stomach issues, then you could layer in some protein, because that does help people feel a little bit more full than just snacking on gummies all day long. So if you wanted to do a peanut butter sandwich or a ham sandwich or something like that, or some jerky, some trail mix, you can layer that in. But you're looking for around 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour, which with some other food, usually you're going about 200 calories per hour or so. And you're just trying to kind of generally eat on a regular basis, just every 45 minutes to an hour, you're putting something in your mouth so you don't, you keep ahead of the bonk, you're not going to all of a sudden run into a wall. Yeah. So that's a good rule of thumb to start with, and maybe do that on some lower training hikes, with less stakes, where you're like, I'm going to just try this 30 grams an hour thing, see what I like to bring and see how I feel with that.
And that's not to mean you can bring you can eat all the Twinkies you can bring with you. That's probably not the, much as that would be an awesome diet and a great nutrition plan. I don't think that's the one we're looking at here. What about, I like to bring fruit. I like to bring apples because they're easy to carry and it's not much to put in your pocket till you throw it away. I like to bring those things. Are fruits and stuff generally pretty good? Even whether dry fruits or, I know dried fruits add sugar, may or may not be good, but are fruits good to bring with you as opposed to like a packaged, I don't know, a Twinkie or something like that?
Yeah. So if you don't like the packaged foods, or that's just not resonating with you, there are other like real kind of whole foods you bring. Dried fruits are wonderful. They're really portable, so they're really easy to bring on the trail with you. So like dried mangoes or apricots or, anything like that, dried berries, raisins, things like that are good. Fresh fruit is good if you don't mind carrying it. It's a little bit extra weight sometimes, or a little bit extra, garbage sometimes, like if you have to peel an orange or peel an apple or something, or peel a banana or something like that. But so there's those considerations too. But yeah, that's a great, because fruit has carbohydrate in it. So it's a great one to use for sure.
I always carry a couple Granny Smiths with me. Of course, like you said, that's bulk, the big apple sticking out of your...
Yeah.
I wear cargo pants all the time, but big apple sticking out. But I've always looked at fruit as being not only something that tastes good, so you want to have it, but it's got the sugars and carbohydrates in it. Plus, it adds some... I'm trying to think of the right word. Moisture.
It has high water content. Yeah, exactly.
Like especially grapes and oranges and even apples, to a certain degree, add a lot of that. So you're getting... I've always looked at that as getting a couple of different things with one snack. Is that really the way to go? I mean, am I on the right track here?
Definitely, yeah. Fruit has high water content, and it also has the carbs, so it's like a 2-in-1 for you. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and it feels really refreshing. I like the fresh fruit on the trail. Sometimes you have a little bit of taste fatigue with packaged foods. I'm a little bit tired of like trail mix or something kind of dry, crunchy or salty, so it's nice to have the fresh fruit there. Yeah.
What do you think of the latest thing that's become all the craze, and I actually kind of like some of these, are the protein bars or the keto bar. I mean, they call them keto bar. I don't think that's an accurate description. Like Bear Bells and Built Bars and things that they taste really good, like a candy bar, but they're not laden with all the junk that normally goes with them. I mean, and I kind of like those for when I'm going on a little hike and, I want to have something sweet. Because I'm like anybody else. I like chocolate. I like sweet stuff. But
it's delicious. Yes, I agree.
Not necessarily good for you. What do you think of those things? Are they pretty good to have? Are they a good in-between thing? Do you get a benefit from them or not? Or am I just fooling myself?
And most of those have a little bit of carbs in them too. Like most of the brands have around 15 grams of carbs per bar. So that's great. Yeah, it'll give you some carbs. You wouldn't want to do it if you're doing a lot of really high intense things. So like maybe you are doing some sprints, and you're a skier and you're just doing some sprints or something like that, where you just need that high intensity. Protein isn't useful for that, but for sure, like on a hike when it's low to moderate intensity, you can use protein throughout just as a way to help you make sure that your stomach doesn't feel too hungry. It's not a very useful fuel source for your body. So your body primarily uses fat and carbs for fuel while you're hiking. So you can think of protein as just like, this is something delicious that I like to bring with me that helps me feel full. And it can also help promote recovery, like even during or when you're done with your hike. If you're having some protein, that can help recover your muscles and your soft tissues like tendons and ligaments. Yeah, so it can be useful. But I wouldn't necessarily think of it as a fuel source for your body if you are trying to make sure that you're getting enough calories in real time, like during the hike itself. Yeah.
So what you're saying is I can still have the Twinkies for the high energy.
Yeah. And like jerky or something like that, or a pouch of tuna, that's really common to bring, where you want to sit down and have a lunch, so that protein, of course, is going to help you feel full. It'll just help you feel like, oh, that was nice on my stomach, but it's not going to fuel the muscles while the hike is happening. So that's where the carbs need to happen.
I'm not promoting Twinkies as a good food to have. I'm trying to find an excuse to have more Twinkies. But and I, to be honest with you, I rarely ever eat sweets like that because I know that they're just for my body, those big sugar things are just not good for me. They just mostly weight gain kind of thing. You kind of mentioned post exercise stuff and protein. So one person, a dietitian, once told me that what I should do, and they were speaking about me specifically, but it seemed to be a general rule, is when I get done with my hike is to have some protein available for me. Like a lot of times my wife will cook up a big thing of chicken wings or chicken breasts and bring 4 or 5 ounces of that, have it in a cooler. I have little cooler bags and stuff to have. So when I get done the hike, to have some of that. Is that really good advice? I mean, have that protein after you're done?
Yeah, after you're done, that's perfect. Yeah, you want to have kind of a balanced meal after you're done. So the protein helps with muscle rebuilding and repairing, those tendons and ligaments, and a lot of other body processes. You want some fat there. You always need fat in your diet. That's important to have. And usually that comes along with whatever else you're eating. So like sometimes people have meat that has fat in it, or maybe they saute vegetables in olive oil or something like that. So a good balanced recovery plate is some kind of fat, some kind of protein, some kind of carbohydrate, because that helps replenish what's called glycogen stores. So that's like the storage form of sugar. It's in your muscles and in your liver. So that can set you up well for the next hike you do, get that storage sugar back on board. And some kind of color. So fruits or vegetables, they're nice. They give a lot of vitamins and minerals. They're anti-inflammatory. So just any kind of a balanced plate like that can really be helpful. And usually people tend to eat like that anyway. Like people are like, I'm going to have some chicken wings and maybe you have some rice with it and maybe you have a salad with it or something like that. So it's very normal foods, but it's good to have the balance there.
Usually what I have in my little cooler bag that I leave in the car when I get back is I usually have, if we had some chicken the night before, and we usually have chicken thighs instead of breast. Mm-hmm. I just like them. A little bit more fat content in there, but from what you're saying, that's a good thing. Yeah. Usually an apple. I love carrying an apple with me, so I have an apple in there. If I don't have any food left over from the night before, protein bar, so I'm getting the protein, and then an apple, and then another drink. Make sure I always have more water in the car, so when I get back, I have something to drink. Gee, it almost sounds like I'm doing it right.
You're doing it right.
It's kind of scary. Kind of scary that I'm actually on the right path with this stuff because I'm typically not, which is great. What do you find that people do? And we've kind of touched on this, but let's be more direct about it. What do you find that people do when they're out recreating nutrition-wise that gets them in the most trouble? Is it because they didn't properly prepare, eat? I mean, did you find any one thing that gets them wrong? Did they not just prepare right and that gets them in trouble? Or what gets people in trouble the most out there?
I think it's just not eating regularly enough. Okay. So it's easy to just think about, I won't eat till I'm hungry, or maybe I'll eat at a certain place on the trail that makes sense to stop and have a rest. And that might be 3 or 4 hours in, where that's too late. You should have been eating at least every hour before that. So I feel like people kind of like wait too long and don't realize that eating regularly can really help them. Yeah. Same with drinking, just hydrating regularly. Yeah.
Right. So I had somebody who was emailing me a while back. They were trying to make their own snack foods for recreating. They apparently know more about how to cook stuff than I do. And I said that one of the things I try to do is if I'm driving someplace to go on a hike, and I might be in town where it's 20 minutes to get there, or I may want to really venture out. I'm going to be driving an hour or 2 hours before I even get to. Mm-hmm. I'm known for driving further to go on a hike longer than it takes for me to do the hike.
Oh yeah,
which happens a lot. Is it? What should be the time frame between eating prior to going out and hiking, cycling, climbing, whatever you're going to do? What should be, should you be within an hour? Should you be within 30 minutes? Is 2 hours good? What's that time frame between when you eat before you go out that you lose the benefit of having that nutrition?
Yeah, if you eat a normal meal that's kind of a mixed meal like what we talk about, it has some fats, carbohydrates, protein in it. Usually that's pretty much digested about 3 or 4 hours later. Okay. And that's when people usually would eat another meal. And so if you've eaten a meal and it's been 3 or 4 hours or longer, and then you're starting your hike, that would be like the time where you're like, now I want to eat some simple carbs right before I hike and as I hike. To be able to just not bonk, to keep your blood sugar levels stable and manage that. If you are waking up really early in the morning, sometimes people do this where maybe you have a really long hike. I've done that before where you have to wake up super early, maybe before the sun, just to be able to complete the hike by the time nightfall happens. So sometimes it's really hard to eat a full meal 3 or 4 hours before you're gonna hike. So then you just eat what you can. Maybe it looks like just a couple pieces of toast with peanut butter on it. But then as you're hiking, you're eating very regularly. Every half hour, every 45 minutes, you're putting something in your mouth. If you can't start out with like a well-stocked stomach there. Yeah.
Nobody wants to be making eggs and sausage at 5 a.m. for their hike. It's a little early.
Yeah.
So the idea I've been running on within an hour I try to get out there is actually kind of working for me, and I thought it was because I've rarely ever had an issue where I was so exhausted I couldn't continue, and I can count on one hand. Trust me, I don't know how I got there. I think it's just instinct. It's certainly not education on my part, and I've only had a couple of instances where I've had problems with leg cramps, and it was boggling to me. One of them happened in Yosemite some years ago, and hiking, it just had horrific leg cramps, and I couldn't figure out why. I'd eaten, I drank water, something happened there. It was terrible. But I rarely ever have had that issue, and I think, like I said, just by accident that I got it right. So if you're eating breakfast, you're like you're going to do a day hike and go 5 or 6 miles. You're eating breakfast, and you're hitting the trail within an hour or so. You're probably going to be fine. And if it's a short hike, as long as you have something when you're done and you're drinking water along the way, you're probably in good shape. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I'm like most people. I like to travel light, so I don't want to pack my bag full of food. But I understand if I'm doing a 10-mile hike, there's going to be a sandwich in there. There's going to be fruit in there. There's going to be extra stuff in there to be properly. And I've always told people, be prepared for the unexpected. If something happens, you get injured, you're going to be stuck to be prepared for that.
You get injured, you get lost, conditions are different than what you anticipated. Like I always pack extra food because I just want it in case something like that happens. Yeah.
You're one rolling out on a rock or slipping and twisting an ankle away from your trip going to hell in a handbasket, for lack of a better way to put it, and things getting more complicated. We've talked a lot about this stuff. Obviously, the idea is I don't want you to give away all your secrets. We want people to go buy your book because there's way more information in here than we're going to discuss in here. But one of the other things I want to talk about briefly is there are different kinds of activity: hiking, running, cycling, climbing. Is the nutrition, other than maybe the intensity, which may be answering the question, is the nutrition you need for the different types of outdoor recreation different, or is it all just basically intensity-based? If you're a runner and you run normally, you're probably in good shape, but if you decide you're going to run up Pikes Peak, that's going to be different. Is it the same? It just depends on the intensity?
Yeah, there's a couple different considerations for different sports, so it in general, like your body operates in certain zones, if it's low versus moderate versus high intensity. So you want to be able to fuel accordingly for those. So yeah, you're right. If you're cycling at low intensity or you're going a short distance, like maybe you're really only cycling 10 miles, that doesn't take too long. Versus if you're cycling all day, that'd be similar to if you're doing a 3-mile hike versus an all-day hike as far as your nutrition considerations. And then you layer on what else is going on. Are there any other variables that might affect how my body functions? So is it, like we talked about the environment, is it really hot or humid or windy or very cold or something like that? And then the other thing is, how conditioned am I? Because if you're doing something that's unfamiliar for your body, it's going to be less efficient. Like your body's going to be less efficient, so it'll take more calories and carbs to do the thing. Yeah. And then there's sport-specific things. If you are doing a through hike, you're going to have easily carry a lot of gear versus if you are doing an open water swim, obviously you can't really carry a lot with you. So sports specific, like how do you flee for that? Or if you're ice climbing or skiing, is it very cold? Do you need to keep certain foods on you that won't freeze? Just stuff like that to consider. So I talk about all that in the book as well. Yeah.
Nobody wants to eat a frozen Twinkie. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense because I'm a hiker. That's what I write about. That's what my whole environment's about. I have a bicycle hanging up from the ceiling of my garage. It hasn't been down in probably over a year because I'm not a cyclist. I love the cycle. I just don't do it as much because, with what I do, I need to be out there hiking more often. So if I was to take that bike down and somebody said, let's go on a 20-mile bike ride, I might have to adjust for that a little differently than if they said, let's go for an 8-mile hike. That's,
yeah.
I got to push this piece of equipment around instead of just pushing myself around.
Yeah. And it's a little bit different movements. Yeah. So if it's just, it feels new to you, or you're going a little bit more intense because it feels less efficient movements, then you might need a little bit more carbs for cycling. Yeah. Gotcha.
Marisa, this has been a great conversation with you. I appreciate you taking the time. I don't want to take up all your time here. Do you have anything else you want to tell us that maybe we didn't ask you about what is important for people to know?
You brought up something that I thought was interesting about cramping.
Okay.
That's really common. Yeah. So if your listeners might want to hear about cramping, we can talk about that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's a lot of different kinds of cramping. So you're trying to figure out what the cramp was caused by. So it could be caused by dehydration. Sometimes it's electrolyte imbalance, usually not enough sodium. That's the thing most people think of, but it's not as common as people would think. Sometimes it's what we were just talking about. Are you conditioned for the sport? Because if you're demanding something on your muscles that they're not used to, that can cause cramping. So maybe it's just too intense for what you were trained for. And sometimes it's a glycogen depletion. So that's that storage sugar in your muscles where you literally just run out of fuel and your muscles cannot contract. And sometimes it's mental. I've seen this with a lot of athletes where sometimes they only cramp if it's on competition day or something where they have a lot of anxiety around the event or whatever thing they're trying to accomplish. And if you have a lot of anxiety and tension, sometimes that causes cramping. So you're trying to figure out what might the cause be and how can I troubleshoot it from there? Yeah.
Anxiety and tension just usually gives me a headache, but I can see where it could probably cause that thing. So how would you, if you're out there, and well, let me ask you this question first. I hear pickle juice is great for cramps. Mustard, I hear, is also great for cramps. Get a little, when you go out to eat, grab a couple extra things of mustard and there's a little. Those are good for cramp that might be because of dehydration.
No, it's actually a different mechanism. Yeah.
Okay.
So the pickle juice and the mustard, the current operating theory in sports science is that they think it's central nervous system fatigue. So if you're putting something intense like that on your tongue, like the pickle juice or the mustard, it sends a signal to your brain that disrupts the cramping, like the nerve signal. They think it's central, rather than like a mechanistic thing within the muscle. Yeah.
That's it. I was thinking if it wasn't dehydration, it was metabolic of some type. It was fixing an imbalance, but this is all mental kind of thing.
Yeah. That's the current theory around it. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So if you're out there and you're experiencing cramping, I'm out there and I'm cramping. And like I said, Yosemite had no idea. Nothing I wasn't accustomed to doing, but there I was cramping up. Is there a way for the person to know why they're cramping, or should they just try everything, drink water, have a salty snack, down some pickle juice? What do you do?
Direct massage and trying to relax the muscle, then playing a little bit of detective. And sometimes that's hard to do. You can ask yourself, have I been eating or drinking enough? And maybe you don't know the answer. Maybe you're not quite sure what enough means for your body. Or playing a little bit of detective, is this something I'm not used to and I have not trained for, and it's way beyond my skill level at this current time? And that might be the source of the cramping, is just that you're asking your muscles way too much for what they're trained to do. Yeah, so you can kind of look at it within context and try to figure out what's going on. But the pickle juice can help for sure. Yeah, that helps with some people. Yeah.
I usually carry a couple of things of mustard, and I've never had to use it. I said I can count on one hand and have a couple fingers left over about how many times I've actually had cramps on there. And every time it's happened, it's like, I don't know why this is happening to me.
Yeah, cramps are frustrating too. They're so painful. Yeah.
And I actually, when I got back in Yosemite, got back to the car I was renting, could barely get in it to drive the 30 minutes back to the hotel I was staying at. It was so painful, but I knew I just couldn't stay there. I had to get someplace where I could rest and stuff. It was miserable, especially on my one trip to Yosemite. So, of course, here I am on a vacation and things like that are happening to me.
You got to go back and redeem yourself.
It's on my very long list of places to go visit. It's a long, long list. That's great information. I had no idea that's how that. I just assumed it was metabolic with the pickle juice, and because there's a lot of sodium in that, and especially in
Usually the cramping, like in like the lab conditions when they've observed it with the pickle juice, usually the cramping stops before the sodium really could even be absorbed. So that's why they think it's a central nervous system thing.
Wow,
because the tongue does have receptors that communicate with the brain that way. Yeah.
I love it when I learn something new. Yeah. And I mean, I've learned a lot of new things just reading your book and talking to you, but that is really, to me, like, wow. Nobody knows. It works, but nobody knows why.
Sometimes that is the case.
Mysteries of modern science that are kicking in there. Marisa, anything else you want to tell us about that we may have missed about how to have proper nutrition when you're out there?
No, I think we covered it really well. Yeah. Okay. I just want to let people know how to find me.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. So my website is realnutritionllc.com. My private practice is called Real Nutrition. And then, you can find me online. My Instagram handle is Real Nutrition Dietitian. So find me there, send me an email, send me a text, whatever you'd like to do. All my contact information is on there.
Great. And the book is Nutrition for Outdoor Recreation. It's from Falcon Guides. And you guys who listen to the podcast a lot have heard me talk a lot about Falcon Guides with the many different books they have on outdoor recreation. They do great guidebook. This is another one of those. Really, really great information. Like I said, it's a quick read, a lot of good reference material here. So I highly suggest, I guess you can get this anywhere. I'm assuming Amazon,
distributed, Amazon,
Barnes and Noble.
Yep. It's on falconguides.com. Yeah, right. It's everywhere. Yeah.
And I'll include some links to where people can find the book, a link to your website so people can find you. Marisa, thanks a lot. This is a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
A lot of really good information. I think people are going to find this really interesting. But get the book so you can. And the other good thing about this, since it's got a lot of good information, is it's a nice lightweight reference book, and you can look at it when you're getting ready to go for a nice long hike. And what's a recipe I can have to get ready for that? It's all there.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. And everyone out there, thank you for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. We'll talk to you next time.